Here we are. Isn't this the best time to speak about the future of work? So I think it was quite interesting to come with this topic, which basically is a study which has been done in collaboration between Dell Technologies and the Institute for the Future. Maybe some context about what Institute for the Future is. Obviously, I hope most of you know what Dell Technologies is. Institute for the Future is a California, Silicon Valley-based institution, a non-profit research organization, which is existing already for more than 50 years. Those people have been engaged with very large corporations from all over the world, basically to look at what is the future, not only on the workspace, but also on the economy, also on our lives. So the interesting thing in the context of the Institute for the Future is really that they're looking at the pace of evolution of how can we be impacted in our economies, in our work, and how fast this can go. I think there has never been a time where technology typically is impacting our way of living or our way of working. So it's going to be interesting to go through this study so that you understand better how do we see the pace of this and how do we see the impact it brings towards our business. So as mentioned, those people are concentrating on the future of things. We are going to speak only about work today. If you would be interested to know more about the full study, we'll give you the link at the end of this session so that you can go through it. What is work? Where is work? What is the impact of COVID-19 on the way we work? That's not part of the study, but I want to get back to the definition of work. We had an internal call within Dell recently about returning to site. Interestingly enough, the first slide was we are not returning to work, we are returning to site. So at Dell, we were able to keep working, I think 100% of our people from home, or apart from the people of the services organization who need to go to customer. But basically, we shifted from one day to the other, close to 95% of our people working from home. There was a recent study in Belgium that between 5 and 7% of people work from home on a regular basis, meaning 1 day or 2 days a week. Maybe more on a sporadic basis. So let's say more or less 17% work from home once every other week. So I think it's quite interesting to see not only what is work, but where is this happening? Are you able, in the context of what's happening today with this pandemic, to keep working, but from a different place? So one of the questions which is being asked, and again, this is kind of an intro towards the study, but it's about why are so few people working from home today? And there are two answers to this. Obviously, the content of their job has to do with it first, but secondly, if you look at the people, the first one, which are the employers, have a lack of trust that their employees will be delivering on their jobs while working from home. So how can we work on this? And this is not part of the study, open question. And the second answer is, I think people like to have those social contacts which are away from those screens. I can tell you, I had a call with some of my team yesterday, and they miss the office. They really miss the office while we are day long, all of us behind our screens and with our headsets from the morning to the to late evening. I think most of us are missing the social contact. So it will be interesting to see in the context of the evolution of work, is this moving in that context as well? And I think if you look further towards the environment, are we going to tackle that on the long run? We have at Dell close to 30% working from home. We have decided within this context of COVID-19 to have more than 50% of people working from home. So we are now, as we speak, working on that return to site plan. In that context, there will be more people working from home post-COVID than we had previously. Sorry. So I just want to close this introduction on definition of work with the fact that obviously work is not a place, but it's a series of tasks. You need to have a series of skills in order to perform your job. I think quite interesting to leave the breakfast table in the morning and say to my wife and to my children, I go to work and I just go next door to my office, which is just close to the kitchen. So quite interesting way of changing. What does that mean precisely? Where is work? What is it? So if you look at where we are working from, how we are working and what we are doing on a daily basis, I think this is already the reality. So work from anywhere at any time. To get back on the trust that employers should have towards their employees, I think quite interesting to see that typically today, if you are in those conf calls, you can see the real life of our people being really also absorbed by the daily life at home. So I think it's more about our people being able to deliver more than people having to deliver from the office. So I think this will have also, again, an acceleration on the way we look at work. So interestingly enough, this study was independent from what is happening. I'm sure that the acceleration will be even further in the context of what's happening with COVID. So what are we going to look into today? Three topics, and why those topics? So the first one is going to be about the emerging technologies. So basically, the Institute for the Future is really putting together the why the work is going to change in those coming years and where this is coming from and what enables it. So I think an important part of this is the fact that emerging technologies will really enable this new world. Then we'll go into their predictions and their forecasting, and we'll close with the dilemma. So basically, it can't come by itself. It's not an easy way out. So there will be dilemmas coming at the end of the session, and I'm sure you will all recognize those in your own organization or institution today. So the Institute for the Future is really seeing 4 major emerging technology in the context of changing the way our future is going to be evolving. Those will definitely enable new ways, new approaches to decision making and collaboration throughout our organization. And the ideal in an ideal world, it will create another workplace for our people throughout the world. So we'll give a couple of examples along the presentation. Collaborative AI, I think it speaks by itself. It's really human to machine relationship. We have a good example on some detection of breast cancer in the UK, and how this technology is really helping the doctors, but it's really a question of collaboration. It's not only AI. The second emerging technology is multimodal interfaces. I think in this one, you need to look at things like video games, so typically gesture recognition. There is a lot of research being done as well that we could go towards a taste or smell within those interfaces. There's still a lot to come on those topics. The third one, which seems to me quite advanced, and again, we'll give a couple of examples, is everything related to extended reality. So basically augmented and virtual reality. So we're going to see that we are coming more and more also in what we call the mixed reality, combining both augmented and virtual. And this is really to combine real and virtual environments and look after the human-machine interaction, basically generated by computer technology and wearables. I think in this specific context, we were looking at VR in the past, mainly around gaming. Interestingly enough, I think we're going to see a couple of examples which are coming from industry we would never have expected a couple of years back. Finally, on the ledgers, I think the most appealing example here is going to be blockchain. So for me, quite known from most of us, or at least from some of us. But basically, what blockchain is supplying is really a transparent data storage mechanism, which really allows all parties to collaborate in the context of a full data transaction. All right, so moving further, and it's important for me to make this as illustrative as possible, and I will come back on examples. The context of this study is really to understand, and the outcome is confirming that the combination of human and machine is going to change and potentially revolutionize the way we are working in the coming years. What's a bit unprecedented, to be transparent, is the pace again. So they don't see that happening in 10, 20, 30 years. They basically see that happening nowadays through our own generation. Again, we will come back on what is work precisely. So a series of tasks, a couple of skills, and not a place. I think it's interesting because it means that if you give a couple of tasks or a couple of skills to a machine, then the content of your job is changing, and you need to make sure that the content of your job is evolving as well. So we'll speak about the new jobs being created in the context of AI. Basically, the study comes to the conclusion that 85% of the jobs that today's learners will be doing in 10 years' time probably don't exist yet. So they still have to be invented. So I think that if you think about the fact that some of the tasks we are doing will keep doing and some of the tasks we will not be doing anymore, it's definitely interesting to see that the intrinsic context and content of our job will evolve, and that portion still needs to be invented and created. So it means there will be reskilling, there will be learning required in order to get there. So in the context of this study, again, what they see is 3 shifts shaping the future of work: inclusive talent, empowered workers, and AI fluency. And I will get back on every single one individually. So inclusive talent, couple of topics here. So I think the first one is going to be a lot about hiring and retaining the talent. How can human and machine work together in order to evaluate the compatibility of human with machine and the other way around, outside than looking at gender, age of or class of social class. So basically, I want to give an example here on also one of the risks that we see while moving into this inclusive talent. There was a study made around the fact that you can create by putting massively AI in hiring, you could create some bias. So basically, a normal human being. So I just take myself as an example, mid-age white male recruiting. So we are seeing that basically I would have the bias to recruit people like me, unfortunately. So I think it's important that we teach the right way with the diverse talent, with the way we are looking at diversity and inclusion in companies. We are teaching the machine the same way to avoid we keep hiring like we could have done in the past. I think that bias thing is definitely an important topic. So you can see that out of the study, 67% of the leaders hope, I say expect, but I think it's hope that the new technologies will really remove the human bias in the way we make decisions. The second topic regarding inclusive talent is something I'm particularly interested in. And again, it's a bit further from this study, but it's really looking at how we can engage more diversity from the beginning into the studies. So I want to give an example here. So my second son is 14 years old. He's in trade in the second year middle bar in Gerhardsbergen. He's studying STEM, and on 2 classes of STEM in his school, there are only three young girls. So I think again, this is not directly linked to this study, but if you want to speak about diversity, about inclusive talent, and so on, I think we need to understand and better promote those type of study within our schools and from the beginning. I think it's critical. So also this will have to evolve on the right way. The second shift is about empowered workers. So again, expectations from the leaders is that emerging technologies will definitely improve the productivity of their people. So what we are seeing, and I will give here a couple of examples, mainly in the context of virtual reality and augmented reality. What we are seeing, we really need to make sure that this technology is giving more, is bringing more from an added value from a productivity perspective. Sometimes it has a lot to do with avoiding risk, for example, and I will get to those examples so that you understand better what I mean with this. So I give you here 3 examples on where we see where augmented reality or virtual reality is bringing more towards the employers or towards the employees. So the first example on the left-hand side is basically a program in virtual and augmented reality on how to wash your hands before a surgery for a nurse. So I think it gives a lot of context. It could probably be used by many of us today in the context of COVID-19, but they really are emphasizing and training their nurses to wash their hands properly prior to a surgery. So typically the way they are using this. The second example is it's a VR simulator for crane operators. So basically for crane operators in harbors, obviously not an easy task, but yeah, before you could only train on the job with all the risks that are involved into this, and now you can potentially test this totally through this virtual reality. And the last one, interesting one as well, is capacity for firemen to train. So people have developed this to make sure first, again, to avoid risks from the fireman perspective, from a people perspective, but also that those people are more trained, more capable to attack a couple of, to respond to a fire that wouldn't be something that you see on a regular basis. So quite interesting industries that were not typically expected as being the innovators in the virtual reality. And I'm sure you might have other example as well from your own perspective. The last one, and that's one I've been personally engaged a lot in the last 1 or 2 years, I must say, is really about the interaction between AI and human. How can AI bring more towards human and complement it? So I think there are a lot of people who fear, or at least you read a lot of articles or things in the press about people fearing to lose their jobs. And I think we need to understand why this is not like that, and why AI will create potentially new jobs, and definitely should help us to eliminate a couple of tasks that we are doing while concentrating on the tasks where human can add its added value. So to get back specifically on the study, 70% of the business leaders who have been engaged into this study really see the partnership between machine and robots to be able to overcome the human limitations. I will get back to that example of breast cancer maybe here. So basically, we don't think that AI is going to replace a human in the context of being able to look at how this is evolving, how cancer is evolving, how it's being treated. Obviously, AI is missing the history of the patient often. However, the combination of both, so AI can treat a couple of tasks in parallel. They can work without stopping 24/24, while at the end of the day, the decision to go either to surgery or to have a specific treatment will always come back towards the radiologue or the doctor who is in charge of treating this cancer. So I think the combination and the added value which is being created between the two is definitely where we need to look at in order to improve the way we are looking at moving forward. 3 types of jobs can be created in the context of AI, and that's the way we are looking at things today. There was a study published by MIT in 2017, so it's not so recent. They say basically we will develop AI trainers moving forward, AI explainers, and AI sustainers. So those trainers will be needed to develop the AI personalities. They will be there to train them to convey what we call empathy. I think if there is one thing which is missing to the robots and that we are not being really able to teach them is empathy. It's a typical human personality. The second type of job is the AI explainer. So basically, the AI explainer will be the one able to develop the algorithmic decision making. So really, the one who are making sure that this algorithm is working on the long run. And the sustainers will also work, and that's an interesting topic, and we'll come back in the dilemmas at the end of this presentation. The AI sustainers will seek to prevent AI from hurting anybody, from doing any harm to anyone. So if you see at how the world is looking at AI. I think interesting feedback from Gartner last year in their Digital Workplace Summit. So basically, key takeaways here is emerging technologies are entering the workplace. So our work activity is being touched by it. The rate, the pace is never seen before. And within the next 4 years, Gartner predicts that AI will be an essential part of our daily work. So again, I think the idea of seeing AI coming and complementing what we are doing from a work perspective on how we are working, I think it's an interesting topic to look at, and definitely all companies should be looking at this from a very close eye. We tend to think that too few are engaged, and I will share with you by the end of this presentation a study that we are rolling nowadays together with Data News on the evolution of the workplace in the context of COVID. What is the impact of it? So I will share with you. We already have more than 3,000 people who answer to this study, to this survey done in collaboration with Data News. So it would be interesting when we get the outcome of those to see if COVID is impacting your accelerations towards impact of AI, typically in companies, but also digitalization. So we see many companies are accelerating their digitalization through what's happening today in the COVID. Going back to collaborative AI, and this is again really much linked to what type of skills, what type of tasks can be automated depending on the type of job that you have. So there are jobs which are very much linked to repetitive skills. Some we will consider more from a quantitative skills perspective, and finally we got the ones which are more related to functional skills. I like to take examples where I've been engaged on. My first job, I used to work for a bank, BBL, which doesn't exist anymore. It was acquired by ING at the end of the 90s. And I was working in a small agency. And at the end of the day, we had to put all the bank transfer all together. We were typing, I think, between more than hundreds of bank transfer on a daily basis in an agency. You all remember, at least for the people of my age, that we were giving away those bank transfers in the bank agencies in the past. And basically, there were people encoding that in the agencies itself. So that is typically a repetitive skills which can be totally automated. Alors, it has not been totally automated because some of us are still doing that through home banking or self-banking, whatever. But I can tell you that most of those bank transfers are now happening in a fully automated way. And that was something that was taking hours of workers a little bit more than 20 years ago. Yeah, quantitative skills is going to be more related towards people that need to make a judgment. So typically it could be an engineer, it could be a scientist. So we believe that there must be pre-work towards those work, and we discussed about a doctor, for example. There is definitely possibility there to combine automation in the context of those jobs. And the last one is probably the one who's going to take or longer or definitely not able to fully automate, far from it. So probably if we can automate 20% of those skills, it's going to be already a lot today. Quantitative skills, I think it's a 50-50. And repetitive skills, we can probably automate 80% of those. I want to come back on the pace on how this is evolving, how this has been evolving, and we could compare the industrialization years that we had in the recent centuries. We can compare if we want to go that far, the evolution of manual labor towards the steam power. From steam to electricity, transformation of agriculture, all of those took decades. The Institute for the Future is really expecting those transformations to impact our jobs now. I think it's really looking at impacting our jobs in our own generation, and that's, I think, what's the most striking if you look at the evolution of this impact. To come to a conclusion, basically I shared with you a couple of comments from the study, a couple of comments from a personal examples or from business example. Obviously, we see a potential pitfalls to this evolution. So to this human-machine partnership relationship. However, whatever you want to call it, but potentially we could unlock tremendous good if we are mindful of those pitfalls and are prepared to come together in a strong partnership. So I will get a little bit on those three. I think we covered already some of them. But the first one is definitely about the algorithmic bias. So we need to make sure that we achieve diverse and inclusive workforces. Employment seekers must be able to understand how the profiles will be interpreted. Sorry for my English, by machine learning tools used by employers. I spoke with somebody from a company in Belgium, a CIO, working in the people industry. So in people industry, let me explain that. So people typically putting people at other companies, depending on their skill or on their competencies, and they are starting to use AI in production. So in order to search for candidates, they put AI in practice in production, and it starts to give some pretty good results. But I think that bias thing is still something that will need to be covered, and he couldn't agree more. He couldn't agree more on this. The second one is the digital skills gap. I think linked to that is the diversity and inclusive talent. So how do we bring the people who are working today in our companies with that pace of evolution towards the next step, to make sure that if some of their tasks are being automated, how do we make sure that the other tasks can be, the new tasks can be fulfilled by people where we don't know yet what are those jobs, we don't know yet who's going to be able to fulfill it, and how fast will we need to get there. So I think it's important that companies are understanding and preparing themselves for this change and for this evolution. Last dilemmas to conclude is going to be around the workers' rights and protections. I think there are two underlying topics here. The first one is about privacy, information about our employees, information about privacy in the context of a company, patent, and so on. The second one is going to be more around ethics. So what can we do? What can't we do in the context of that specific relationship between human and machine? All right. So this was basically the three potential pitfalls, or the three dilemmas that we see in the context of are we going to get there? So how will we be reaching this future of work without hurting ourselves, if ever possible? So if you want to know more about the full study, I share here with you the link, and there is also a podcast, very popular in the context of everybody working from home. All of us like to, at some point of time, get into those podcasts. So I think the timing was good. I hope so, Ingrid.
Yeah,
So,
it's okay.
so let me know if you have any question, and I will stop sharing my screen.
I have some questions. First of all, regarding the inclusion you were talking about, the fact that when hiring new people, you have to be as diverse as possible. Catalina said, "Is AI not created in the image of of the creator and has by default the same biases as the creator?"
Yeah, I think that's exactly the pitfalls we shouldn't fall into. So we might we probably, depending on companies from companies, we have a couple of rules regarding talent, hiring, and so on. I think we need to apply potentially the same rules if we believe that those are without bias. So depending on the question, depending on the way we want to treat hiring, we need to make sure that we avoid the bias indeed by putting ourselves in the shoes and creating that empathy thing. So one of my main issue with AI, and something we are not going to be able to teach to the machine, is definitely empathy. So that's the typical human thing, and that comes with it. So empathy will help you to avoid the bias, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Um, what about using AI when hiring people? Because there were a couple of remarks about if you use only AI, what about the click you'll need to have when you hire people? Will
Yeah,
AI not overrule that?
yeah, they are. They
Same
are.
direction.
So I think a lot of this presentation is not AI replacing the human. It's a lot about collaborative AI. So it's like the example we had with the breast cancer. So you put some AI to analyze the X-rays, but at the end of the day, the decisions comes from a doctor, which didn't go through that repetitive skills or easy things to do. So I think you need to look at that exactly the same way for hiring. So you might say we skip a couple of interviews in a long hiring process, but at the end of the day, there must be a click, like you mentioned. There must be human people intervening into the process. So I think the one of the terminology which is important is going to be collaborative AI, and not AI by itself taking decisions that human beings would have done in the past.
Okay, thank you. Um, there was some discussion going on also about the example with the crane, where somebody said, yeah, now people learn to drive the crane or handle the crane or other complicated machines using VR, but isn't that going to, or these people not going to be replaced by, or by digitalization completely, where the crane will be handled remotely and where it will drive automatically, just like cars? What's your vision about that?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I was talking with somebody who was a farmer in my region recently. He still has got his tractor. His tractor is going by itself, but he's still in the tractor. So he remains in the tractor in case something goes wrong. So my question is, are we not going to have the same until a certain point of time where we will totally trust the machine? Question mark. But today, that guy is, I think the tractor is doing itself, is working itself in the field, and is just still in the tractor in case of, and also to bring the tractor from the farm to the field and back. But there is still, at some point of time in the process, human interaction that you need to have. So the question is, in the context of specifically of Arbor, would be a good question. I think we have some people from PSA or other, or from Port of Antwerp maybe around, who could answer that one more specifically.
Mm. But then again, it will take a while before we are there.
Again, it's a combination. It's collaborative AI. So AI is taking a portion, is taking some skills, some tasks, but is not taking the whole job of a person. So the question is, the task that can be automated, you need to replace those within the person who was driving that crane before, and see how you can reuse, reskill him or her in the context of the evolution of his or her job.
Are there some more questions? Okay. Ronald Hermans is responding to what the crane is concerned. We have a company in the beacon community who has robot vessels already. But I guess Ronald, this has, I know the application, but there you are in a closed and maybe private environment where responsibility is better and more closed, regulated rather than on the street or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So Arnaud, do I understand it correctly that for you the challenges for companies are going more into digitalization using artificial intelligence in collaboration with people, but which means that you have to have a better combination, inclusion of all type of people who are developing the AI applications, and making sure that the people that you have now are reskilled and have better digital skills? Or is that a good?
I think it's a good summary. So basically, what we need to do to evolve into that new world is to make sure that we go through that digitalization. We use those emerging technology to add more value to our jobs. So we should not lose jobs. We should make them more powerful by the combination of AI and the human relationship, to be able to do more and to deliver more as an outcome towards our customers, our partners, and our employees. I think basically that's the way I see it.
Okay. Hi, this is Stan from TME. Yes, I think it's unavoidable that the technology will be more and more present in our jobs, in our daily life. We'll have more and more of these gadgets and artificial intelligence and robotics and so on. But some of the jobs will be more impacted, some of the jobs will be less impacted. And actually what we are trying to define or to project a little bit in Toyota is, what are the skills needed in the future to deal with this situation? Because we still will have the same people on the floors to work and empower them with these small tools. But there's going to be a change in the skills needed in a company. And what are those skills? How to project what they're going to need, let's say, in 5 years' time. So the companies can prepare the members to be ready for that time.
Yeah, I think some of those new jobs will be related to I was discussing about those AI trainers, AI sustainers. So most probably people looking at algorithm, people being able to teach to machine some of the tasks that we are today giving to human that we would probably be able to give to machine moving forward. So there are two things here. There will be a reskill of your existing people depending on their capabilities, experience, whatsoever, towards another other type of task on top of what they will keep doing. And I think you will get into looking at AI people being able really to support that change within your organization, depending on what type of organization you are in, what type of sector, industrial sector you are in. So I cannot answer directly to you what type of profiles, but definitely people, I think if you look at those data scientist type of job, people engage into algorithms and so on, that will be definitely closer to the type of skills that you might need in an organization moving forward.
No, but I think you mentioned teaching, and I think that's also something, but more algorithm teaching or the machine teaching. It's also an important here.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arnaud, for the presentation. Thank you, all of you, for joining us again today. Some practical information still you will receive shortly, within half an hour or so, a mail from us with a link to Slido so you can evaluate the session, give your comments on the session, or have suggestions for following sessions or other type of things. Hopefully live events also, I hope, next year. So whatever you want to share with us, please go ahead. Tomorrow you will receive a mail with a link to the ADM website, where you can then see the recording of the session today, the PowerPoint, the drawing, the visual recording that Christophe Brakeler has been making during this session. The link to the inquiry that Dell is doing together with Data News. What else, or other things that I will find that we think is useful. And a report on the session of today that we are making.
Thank you very much, Ingrid.
Thank you, Arnaud. Arnaud, you will receive the original drawing that Christophe is making once we are allowed to see each other again in real life. So you have a memory of the session of today.
Super, thank you very much. And thank you all for joining.
For all the others, I want to remind you that until the end of May, we have weekly our sessions on either practical things or more inspirational things, as you can see here. And in June, we will host sessions with the two speakers that we had planned on our IDM reception in March. They will, on the 10th and on the 17th of June, give their presentation online. It will probably be a little bit different from what they had planned before, seeing the situation. But that doesn't mean it will be less interesting. To all of you, wish you a very good day. The sun is shining, so do enjoy it, and see you hopefully next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye there.